go.
Suck in.
Perfect. You look great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fundamentalists podcast. My name is Elliott Morgan, and I'm here with my good friend Peter Rollins, a doctor of philosophy, as well as a theologian and a public speaker. He's written several books. I've written none. I do comedy on the internet and sometimes on stage and a thing on the Valley Folk. And if you're joining us for the video on this, thank you guys for watching. I see you. Thank you for commenting. We know it's a niche thing. We're not affected by the fact that it's not a massive hit, and it doesn't bother us at all, even in the slightest. But thank you for being here, and thank you for leaving comments also on the subreddit, both for the Valley Folk and for
leaving reviews. I was reading the reviews recently, just last week, and that was really nice. It's beautiful. Cool. Thank you so much for people leaving reviews on iTunes. Does that help as well?
I think it does.
Well,
I mean,
so thank you for helping.
And it makes me feel good. I like to know that we're not doing this all in a
It helps
our
vacuum. Psychology. It helps our our crippling depression.
Well, speaking of psychologies and crippling depressions, Pete, we're talking about the Oedipus Complex on this particular episode. I have been reading a book called The Story of Psychology right now. It's about this big. It's about 400 pages. Probably the biggest book I've ever read in my whole life. And
is it that big lengthwise or thickness-wise?
Thickness.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
Not my little book of Calm.
No.
It's a little tiny.
Yeah.
Because that's your usual book, yeah.
Good standard big book that makes me feel like big old smarty pants, but it's so long, and because it covers the entire history of psychology. It took me forever to get through all of the Babylonians, and then the Greeks came along, and then the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and all these things, all pre-psychology. Apparently, psychology was
pretty
born.
new, yeah.
I don't know, 150 years ago or something, basically. And it's very fascinating, but I finally got to the Freud part, and I finally got to the stuff that I find interesting.
Yeah. And there's a big something, as you know, probably there is a difference between psychology and psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, and depth psychology and analytic psychology. They're all a little bit different, even though they all sound the same. So people kind of think of them as the same. They're all a little bit different.
My understanding is, analytic psychology and psychoanalysis, they're sort of like step-brothers, siblings, but there's a rivalry there. I read about Freud and his general demeanor, the way he came across. He had a bit of an ego, apparently, and really thought the interpretation of dreams was going to be a rock star the moment he did it, and then everyone was like, you're a weirdo and you need to go away. And he felt real bad about that, and then started, my understanding is, so we're going to dive right in. This is my understanding. You tell me
this is my topic, by the way. We're taking it in turns to do topics. 1 week it's Elliott's, 1 week it's mine. So I suggested the Oedipus Complex.
I think it's great.
Oedipus Complex for Americans.
Oedipus, whatever.
Oedipus, doesn't matter.
I also don't know if it's Jung or Young or whatever. But anyway, so he does this book because Freud does a bunch of case studies. He's a bunch of patients. He starts out wanting to be a physiological psychologist. He really believed that he could find a physical, causal reason that all of these crazy things happen. That there was a reason that he was seeing all these trends. What he found in patient after patient through, I don't know if it was hypnotism or specifically, different types of therapy that he was doing. I think he was doing like the ones that he abandoned them after a while.
I'm going to turn off the air conditioner, by the way, so keep talking.
Okay, so I will keep talking. And here I go. And he started to find a recurring theme of specifically females who were or had memories of being sexually abused by their fathers. He was like, this is a revelation. This is insane. Like everyone's doing this. Everyone's experiencing this. He presents it in the interpretation of dreams as well as in a speech that he does in front of everyone. This is a grandiose thing that he thinks is going to change the world. And everyone's like, no. Everyone's like, that doesn't happen. And I have children. I don't do that. You have anyone who it doesn't. It's not a thing. He then later, in his own findings, like in his own patient, the psychoanalysis that he's doing, finds that his ideas weren't actually working under the hypothesis wasn't working, and he needed to alter it in some way. And that's what led to eventually the unconscious, the wish fulfillment, all of this fantasy of those types of things, and essentially infant sexuality. The fact that babies have a sexuality, and the fact that babies there might be a universal bisexuality that babies are born with. Apparently, he maybe took from another guy that he got mad at him or whatever. There's a little drama there. And so after being wrong, after being lambasted, he finds his theory that starts working, which is apparently related very much to what he called the Oedipus Complex, and had spoken in the terms of the Oedipus Complex even before he articulated it fully in the interpretation of dreams. But it was only later that he came. How am I right?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. I like it. So one of the things that you're talking about that's coming out of that as well is that Freud is an experimenter. He is an adventurer going into a land that he doesn't know. So you right from the start, and what you're describing is he's experimenting with lots of things, including hypnosis, and he's using
He probably did
various
some
techniques.
electroshock, magnets. I bet he used magnets.
I'm sure.
They were so into magnets.
Were they? Magnets are great.
I mean, how do they work? I don't know. But everyone back then was like, if you put magnets up to people and you tell them they're cured, they'll get cured.
Wow.
And then people were like, yeah, because you're telling them that they're cured. And that's how the hypnotism stuff started.
Well, because the hypnotism, it seemed to create very, very strong results, but they didn't really last a long time.
Yeah.
So it was about, moving beyond these kind of seemingly miracle cures to something that's got long-term change.
Yes, because my understanding is he really wanted a experimentally verifiable thesis.
Yeah.
Like he wanted it to be scientifically sound and not say more Jungian and more mystical or anything. He wanted actual physical reasons for all these things.
And Freud, by the way, what you're bringing out again is that Freud is similar to Einstein in that,
Genius.
Genius, absolutely. He's one of the canonical figures of the 20th century. And, it's not that everything stopped with Freud. Freud opens things up. So although I'm a Freudian, as in I read Freud and I get a lot out of Freud, I see Freud's insights develop beyond him, mostly in the French tradition, which is my area of interest. And he kind of opens up these incredible insights that sometimes even Freud doesn't realize the intensity and the brilliance of the insight he's had.
It's funny that you say that, Pete, and I have questions about this because we haven't really talked about it, and I want to make sure I'm not, misunderstanding Freud a little bit. But isn't it funny that he opened up all these things, and yet he himself, it seems from what I've read, was very dogmatic in what he believed, very sure of himself, and wanted to hear nothing of what other people had to add to it or alter.
Yeah.
Adler, he ended his friendship with Jung. The other guy,
Reich, no.
Adler was birth order, right? Yeah. And he was the guy
Reich
that was about birth, the trauma of being born. And so he opened up this whole world, but he was a little bitch.
See, this is an important question, right? Because
was Freud a little bitch?
This is an issue for anyone trying to start off a movement that they think is significant. Is to what extent do you have to be a bit dogmatic or not? So I think what Freud was trying to do is he was going I have to protect this. So
yes.
It was all about kicking people out. So he was.
Why wouldn't
he even had a special ring that he made for people who he felt got what he was about, but even the people he gave the ring to, he kind of was like, no, they don't really get it. I did that with my coin. You want to give it to the coin to the people who really get it. But Freud was really trying to protect something. He was a bit like Nietzsche, very egocentric, but potentially because he was right. I mean, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century.
Isn't that funny?
Literally
sometimes
one of the
you can be both. You can think you're the best thing and the biggest hotshot, and you can also be the best thing and biggest hotshot. It's like Michael Jordan.
I know. It's like you're the opposite. You think you're a nobody, and you are a nobody.
I don't think so. I think my understanding of where I'm at is pretty in line.
Is that right?
I think so. I don't think. I was thinking about that the other day, where I was like, there are people who think that. Anyway, we'll get into that.
I want to hear more about that.
Who think that I'm like a hotshot, but no, I think I got a pretty good understanding. But also, what's interesting? The world's falling apart right now, and we're going to be shuffling. The deck's going to get reshuffled on the notoriety, and I think that.
And you're hoping YouTubers are the rulers of the world very soon.
Can you imagine, man? Dude, I watched this this documentary on HBO called I think it was HBO, but it was Showbiz Kids. It was on Amazon or something,
right.
And it's a brand new documentary. It's got Will Wheaton in it and all these old child stars, and one of them is well, he was on Jesse and he passed away, but it was basically a younger generation of like young fame essentially. And seeing the way that these young kids who were fit, like it turned me off so much from the idea of being like, how do I get famous on YouTube? But I think we're onto some cool stuff with this and some other projects that are happening.
Our problem is just our viewing figures and listening figures.
Yeah,
that's
but
the
that'll
only
come.
issue. Yeah. So
That'll come once we start doing good content.
yeah, that's right. God, that's been well. Right. Well, will we jump in? Will I start with some stuff about the Oedipus Complex?
Yes, because I was trying to lay a groundwork.
You
about,
did very good.
Okay.
Well, 10 out of 10.
But I hate talking about this subject so much. So yeah, let's see
How
what
come?
you got. Because it's gross.
Okay, it is weird. It is weird, and that's why some psychoanalysts don't like. Well, right. Some psychoanalysts think that Freud is wrong about the Oedipus Complex.
Yeah, he's a little filthy pervert.
Yeah, and then some people think that you can't introduce it too quick because people freak out by the idea. I am going to try over the course of this podcast is to give a reading of it that's both not gross and interesting and insightful. Okay. Like I think that Freud was onto something because Freud thought it was one of the central insights he had. He said he actually said like if he did nothing else but expose the Oedipus complex, that's something that is worthy of being included in the canon of ideas.
And I will add that in the what I've read is that also based on like neurological and neuroscience and all that stuff that's been happening in the decades since Freud, much of it has confirmed so many of his ideas, specifically about the unconscious. They've verified certain ideas of the unconscious. Certain ones, however, like the Oedipus Complex, because they're more philosophical, lay outside the realm of scientific study. Mm-hmm. But the ones that have had the ability to be verified have been at least supported in recent years.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some really interesting. There's people who are working in the intersection between analysis and neuroscience. I love the fact that neuroscience has the word science in it. I think that's the most kind of like insecure thing ever. What other science has to include the word science? You know, I'm a physics science anyway, but that's for another thing.
Was that like a jab at neuroscience? I mean,
yeah,
that's very
it is a little
funny,
bit. It is a little bit. No, it was Darian Leader who said it. He said it in this conference once, and I was like, "Oh, that's very funny."
That's a niche. That's like a niche shit talk.
It is yeah.
Very specific jab.
It was such a great shit talk. I was like, "Oh, that's very funny." Very few people will get it, but this should be a meme.
That's why I mean, this book is often many chapters are about basically like. For psychology itself, people have been fighting for it to be a science. Like they had to fight for it to be considered a quote unquote science, which that's a whole other podcast episode that we can get into.
Yes. And I don't like psychology. Anyway,
tell me your gross, weird stuff.
Okay.
Tell me your nasty ass.
Because you know what? The wrong reading of the Oedipus Complex can tell us everything that's wrong with society. And then the right reading of the Oedipus Complex can tell us the cure, the way to find satisfaction.
I can think of a lot of things that are wrong with society. So I look forward to seeing how many things this covers. This
core, like the issue is that Freud, I think, misinterpreted the Oedipus Complex a little bit, but his wider insights allow us to interpret it correctly, right? So he starts off, in 1910, right? We'll start off with this essay that he wrote called, I think it was called The Special Object Choice Made by Some Men. I think that's what it's called, something like that.
Catchy,
yeah. And this is the first time he uses the term Oedipus Complex. He's mentioned it in the book. You mentioned Interpretation of Dreams. It's been around, but this is the first time he talks about the Oedipus Complex. And he actually doesn't even say that. He says that it, as people call it, as if it's been around for ages, but it's kind of the first time it's mentioned in paper.
Yeah. As you would know, of course.
Yeah. So as you know, you are reading this paper. It's commonly known as.
I'm part of a company. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's the Valley Folk or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. So
like an egomaniac.
I know, it's brilliant. I love it. But he basically, right. So it starts off in the most kind of like ridiculous way. Not even ridiculous, but he notices in the therapeutic session that when he's working with men, he notices that there are certain commonalities among a lot of the male patients in terms of the choice of the person that they love. And there's 3 of them. And he says we all know these, right? They're in literature. We know guys who are like this in small ways. We know some of the guys who are like this in big ways. But like these 3 things often are found no matter.
Boobs,
Yes.
butt,
And legs.
and legs.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. No, this is the funny thing, because he says, like, no matter what your object choice is in terms of what you find physically attractive, these 3 things are there for a lot of men, right? So the first one is rivalry. There are some men who are basically only attracted to women when there's a rival, someone to defeat. They're with somebody else. They're married. They're inaccessible. There's a rival to beat, right? We've talked about that before. So that's 1. 2, jealousy. That a man can only find someone attractive if there's some way in which they are potentially going to betray them. They're going to flirt with someone else or sleep with somebody else. And by the way, he notices that these are different. Often men are not jealous that a woman has a husband. They're jealous of the woman who is getting attention from someone who isn't the husband. Right? And then thirdly, rescuing. Some men want to rescue a woman in some way. And he goes like, right, we all know this to some extent, and there are books, I'm sure, addressed to women to say if you can, feign, impossibility, jealousy, and rescuing, you can attract some men.
Damsel in distress.
Damsel in distress, right? The woman at the side of the road with the car that's broken down.
So
right?
it's the best.
Yeah, there you go.
What better situation is there? Nothing.
Yeah. So I just explained your life, haven't I?
Absolutely.
Rivalry, jealousy, and rescuing.
Yeah, rivalry, jealousy, rescue, fall.
That's right.
That all makes sense. It also aligns with a book I like that is a relationship self-help book, but it's called Getting the Love You Want, and it's all based in, I think it's based in Freudian stuff that they're very smart about. And recognizing the similarity. Men choose partners, essentially, that both are similar to their mothers and also entirely different from their mothers. And it creates a contradiction and a conflict within the relationship.
Okay, yeah, there's an element of that in this, actually, because we'll get to that. Because Freud's basically going, those are 3 things that, why the hell do they keep coming up? Because they're completely different in a sense. Rivalry, jealousy seem vaguely similar, but then, as I say, Freud says that the man is rarely jealous of the husband. He's jealous of someone else. And then Freud goes, so I'm postulating, like a scientist does, an explanation. And the Oedipus Complex becomes, at the very crudest level, a beginning to explain why this might happen for men. Because when you're an infant, the rival is the father, right? You've got a rival there. You love your mother. The
rival is the opposite sex.
Yes. Well, see, this is where
I'm getting ahead.
No, it's great, but yes, it doesn't have to be. But in the kind of, let's make it the crude Oedipal complex. Yeah.
Yeah, we're using these terms. Yeah. Because all of these terms point toward particular patterns of behavior. I don't think they're, it's not like it's a categorization, right? Yeah. We're making up the label Oedipus Complex to explain a set of behaviors.
That's very true. It's an invention, not a discovery, yeah. But actually, the key to Freud, and Jung agrees actually, is that the first object choice is always the mother for a boy or a girl. So actually...
The caretaker.
What's that? The caretaker, yeah. So you basically have this connection with your primary caregiver, who is symbolically the mother. Doesn't have to be the mother, but it's symbolically the mother. And so the thing that gets in the way of that is the same for boys and girls, which is symbolically the father, who breaks the relationship between the mother and the child. So the father is actually the first rival, technically, for the infant of any sex. So there's rivalry. So you go like, oh, the person, this guy is reliving the original rivalry with the father. Then where's the jealousy come in? Well, a little bit later on in the infant's life, they kind of realize, they learn about sexuality, and they realize that the mother has a sexual relationship with another and not with them. And there is then this jealousy. of what they don't share, what is unique to the adult life, which the child can't participate in.
With the realization that the child can't participate in it, both because of cues that they're being given on a social level, and also because the father is a very large figure that could kill them.
Yes, yeah. In this, the original, yeah, absolutely. Oedipus Complex, which, as I'm guessing everyone knows, comes from the idea of Oedipus in the Greek myth, wants to kill his father to sleep with his mother. He doesn't know it's his mother, but he does, right? So yeah, so there's this fear of the father figure. And then the third one, rescuing. For Freud, his first theory is, well, your mother gives you life, and you're indebted, right? Just like a religious person feels this indebtedness to God that's not economic, you can never repay it, which means you're even more indebted, right? Because if you can pay for something, you're not that indebted. Whenever you can't pay for it, you're even more indebted. And so,
Dependent upon, yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely dependent. So your mother gives you life, so there is this desire to return the favor, to give life back.
Interesting.
To rescue,
idea of reciprocity.
yeah, of
Like
kind
it's
of like
born into us.
more kind of like, because it's not reciprocity as in you don't feel you have to give back the gift, but you feel that this massive gift has been given to you. Your mother has, and even symbolically given life to you, but then realistically changed, given up lots of their desires, lots of their other interests, has given so much to you that the adult wants, the adult male who finds a substitute mother wants to give her something, and of course symbolically or metonomically wants to give her life, give her a child, because she has given him life, so he wants to give her life, so the child.
Okay.
So this is just
it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It checks out. It seems a little thin. And
Yes.
I don't know why.
No, it is a little thin. It is a
Okay.
little thin. This is all wrong, but wrong things start in the right things start in the wrong place, right?
Right.
Just like most scientific theories start in a very crude way and then get better and sharper and better. So
Like
you're
the guy
absolutely
who made phrenology, that you could
Yeah.
feel people's skulls and was like sure of himself and measured everybody's skulls and was like, these big eyebrows mean you're a killer. And then later people were like, doesn't make any sense, and it led to what someone called neuroscience.
Yeah, because the idea was like the brain would be different shapes, depending on, and then that would affect the bone structure
Yes.
that is held within. So it does that lead to
It led to the truth.
yeah. And Hegel, like, who didn't believe in phrenology at all, brings out this kind of deep truth within it.
I believe Freud did believe in phrenology.
Did he?
I believe so. I believe Freud believed in at least craniometry and all that, the shape of the brain was, but
right.
everyone did.
Or at least was like intrigued by those questions.
It was also another fun one that I learned is that Hippocrates, the guy that the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. Hippocrates believed that
Killed lots of people.
lots of people, an actually infinite amount of people, like an incalculable amount of people, because he believed that your body was based on any body problem was based on an imbalance of the four spirits essentially that you had, like earth, wind, fire, and water, and they had bodily equivalents. So like blood was, fire, and bile was earth, and all that stuff. And so he came up with bloodletting, that killed just everyone.
That's funny.
But I think it's very funny.
That's it.
Excuse me. Oh my God. We'll cut that out. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to actually burp. Anyway, let's continue.
But that's, by the way, that when you see the origins of sophisticated thought, and you go, oh, that starts with things like, I think, the whole world is made of water, because water can be tough ice, and it can be steam, which is like clouds, whatever, and it can be liquid. So you go like, that's a ridiculous theory, but actually that's the beginning of kind of scientific thought.
Yeah. There's also like, the sun rotating around the earth. Being like, well, clearly, who wouldn't think that we're the center of the universe? The whole sun is, literally, you can see it moving around.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I know.
People are like, oh, that's crazy that they believe that. No, that makes total sense. You still call it a sunset. Anyway.
Absolutely. So that's where it begins, right? It begins with this kind of like just trying to make sense of what he sees in the clinic, what he sees in desire, and he's starting to make sense of it. And then it starts to help him help clients. But okay, so where does it go from there? This is where it gets interesting.
Well, right? From what I understand, a lot of his patients did not get much better after this particular theory,
Yeah.
and many of his patients dropped off, and his practice started to suffer.
Is that right?
That's what I heard.
Oh wow, that's
Little
true.
birdie told me.
I'm terrible at biographies. I like the ideas. I never really look at the story. So
Yeah, apparently he was panicking a little bit, and he had financial concerns.
Yeah.
Based on everything, but and then but he continued to do it, and he struck gold.
Yeah. So what we've got now with the Oedipus complex, we've got three characters: the woman, the mother, the man, the father, the child. And we have this really interesting thing, which is the mother could be seen as a symbol of return to what's called the lost object, or das Ding, right? Is the thing that will satisfy you. So the mother is the symbol of return to oceanic oneness, the psychedelic experience.
I was hoping you psychedelic.
Yeah.
Okay. That's exactly great.
Great. The father then is the symbol for what gets in the way of you getting the oceanic oneness. And the child wants to break through the prohibition of the father, and get that oneness with the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why I say, which is the wrong reading of the Oedipus complex, is that kind of explains capitalism, right? We're always desiring an object that will satisfy us.
Oh, here he goes again, everybody. something about capitalism. Okay, explain.
Okay, well, the capitalist subject, I should say, is that we do tend to try to find objects that will satisfy us, but when we don't find them, there's prohibitions, and when eventually we get the thing that we think will make us happy, it might be good, but it doesn't. And so we have this constant movement to try and find something which generates accumulation. We accumulate, we buy, we feel unsatisfied, and it connects with also. But that's the idea, is that.
Wait, how does that relate to
the Oedipus complex?
Yeah.
Is that when we...
there's always something.
There's always something.
If only I could get that thing. Oh, I see. All right, yeah.
The mother is the lost object. Now, well, I should say this, right? The right reading...
Or the idea, or what you think is the lost object.
Whatever
it's what you
is.
Symbolically associate with oneness, with wholeness, with completion, not having the anxiety that you have as part of being a human.
So the mother is an algebraic symbol. You can put anything in there. Whatever it is that you're striving for, that will fix everything.
It's the sum of everything. But then the father is sort of the order, rules, earth, power,
and barrier.
Force.
Barrier is the main thing in many ways, the barrier to that. Now, the difference between psychoanalysis proper and what something like object relations theory is that
and people have been dying to know.
Thank
God.
From the beginning of the Fundamentalists,
now, before you ask,
people have asked
the difference between this one thing you've never heard of and this other thing you've never heard of. Let me get object relations. Object
relations theory, which is a form of psychoanalysis, and it's very insightful and interesting, but it does rest on the idea that we have a relationship with the primary object, say the mother, and we're all happy. Everything's wonderful,
great.
Right? We're an infant. We're
everything
like,
I need.
This is brilliant. This is awesome.
I scream, wonderful.
It's your DMT experience, right? It's like, oh, this is amazing.
Yep.
And then
he's not saying that literally. He's Irish, so he sometimes uses the pronoun you or your to describe things in general, but he's not talking about. I have not done.
Oh,
DMT.
That's right. I forget that is a Northern Irish thing.
Because there are people who would be like, Elliott did DMT. I would have told you by now if I'd have done DMT.
Yeah.
But yes,
you will tell us when you've done it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's that experience, and then what happens is we lose that. Right, we're ripped into the world. This is terrible. It's shit, and we now have to be a separate entity, and we're clambering to get back. And in object relations theory, it's all about, not necessarily returning to the original coupling, but it is kind of like it's almost like a fall. There's a paradise, there's a fall, and then there's a return to paradise, right? The confessional Christian notion. Mm-hmm. So the paradise is the child's mouth and the mother's breast, right? Coupling.
Well, paradise would be like the womb, right?
Yeah, the womb or the breast, but really before you individuate, before you become a subject.
The womb would be paradise, and the return to paradise would be the breast.
Well, no, because you still haven't become a subject by that stage. You know, you're not really becoming a subject till like 6 months.
Yeah, you're still having to go through the whole birth process. You still have to go through the birth canal, which is pretty scary.
I know, yeah, because you were just talking about people who do drugs and who think that they can go back to that period.
There's a bunch of studies on people who've done acid and they relive their own birth. Also, it just so happens that one of these people suggested this idea back in the early 1900s. And
Is
Freud
there
said
anything
you couldn't
about
be
like
friends with them anymore.
aliens in this as well?
Huh?
It's like, do they believe in aliens?
Do the aliens believe in us is the question we should be asking.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Well,
So-
okay, but
Return to Paradise.
yeah, paradise lost, paradise lost, paradise returned in some way.
Yeah.
But in a different reading of the Oedipus Complex, which you get with the French structuralists, is the idea that there is no perfect symmetry thing that you had that you lost. It's through the loss that you start to fantasize that there is something that's perfect that would be amazing. So the mother as a symbol of oceanic oneness is created precisely at the moment when we become a subject, when we experience the loss of something.
Nah, bullshit. I'm going to tell you why it's
Yeah,
bullshit.
right.
Because for sure, I've seen pregnant women. There's no way.
Have you? Are you sure you have?
Yeah, well, that's
I
true.
want-
They could
I
be
want
lying.
proof.
No, there's no way that baby is not comfortable at all. Heck, and
Yes.
that baby is experiencing full oneness, full whatever. It is an.
But they don't have a signifier yet.
I mean, you tell that to the baby. Baby doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean anything to the
I
baby.
know, because it doesn't have signifiers. It's pre-signification. As
There's
soon
some
as
kind of point I'm trying to make here that doesn't.
No, but you're right. Like before signification, before the language, the child is happy as Larry, like absolutely having a ball.
Even during birth, even from
Well-
womb to present life, that is the first. I mean, I'm saying this without any knowledge of whether or not this is true, but it would seem to me that if you were a baby in the womb, you have everything you want, you're completely unaware of even the existence of light, and then you're forced through a birth canal. You are constricted and you can't breathe, and you are pulled out into a world that's blinding.
Yeah.
It seems pretty traumatic.
Absolutely.
But you don't have the signification. You can't articulate it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it can't affect your behavior. You're still your brain is still processing stuff that's beyond its.
100%, right? And you can die before you have signification, and animals don't have signification. So that's absolutely true. The issue is
I don't know.
when
You start agreeing with me, I get real scared that I said something even dumber than what I was.
no, that's all true. The issue for psychoanalysis is, and for philosophy is, when you become a creature of language, which means you can signify things, you can have a name for something. I have a name for the chess set. I have a name for you. As soon as you can name something, what happens is it's almost like the birth of the world is the death of the world. The birth of the word is the death of the world. I don't know who said that. I tried to find it. I don't think it was me, but I thought it was Hegel. But anyway, but the idea is that when you start to speak, there is just an ever so slight difference between what you're speaking about and what it signifies. So whenever just this ever so slight, it just doesn't quite map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And also, if you need proof of this, try meditating, like truly meditating. Because if you can, I'm sure there's people who can do this. If they can really reach that Zen place where they are not aware of language or the signified, which I would argue to say is probably impossible to the fullest degree, but I'm sure there's Zen people out there and monks who've done this. If you try, though, as a regular person to meditate and to forget what your name is, forget everything, forget all of it, and just exist like a breathing organism, you can't do it.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Or it takes a lot of work to be able to do. And I'm
or
not
a lot
saying
of drugs or whatever. Yeah.
drugs do provide a certain amount of
a certain amount of
artif-
pre-signifier experience. So yeah, there is that experience, but yeah, it's like once you're a human, once you have signifiers, it's like you just can't completely map the object car onto the physical thing.
And you get music and art, and you get all those things that are trying to express the thing that they can't.
Exactly. So what ends up happening for Lacan is signifiers, which are the words that are trying to signify something, they never quite do it.
Yeah.
So if you look at a dictionary, there's a dictionary is just all these signifiers that point to other signifiers, words that point to other words.
Closed system.
A closed system, but with that closed system, meaning starts to arise. And in the same way, desires like that is we can never get the thing that we want, but by the missing it, we do get satisfaction, we do get enjoyment. So
I mean, the only part that I'm disagreeing with is I feel like you do have satisfaction as a baby.
well, yeah, there
But
is.
I would think that if in your that falls in line with exactly what you're saying. That of course I would think that.
Yes.
Because the illusion was created when I found out that, or at some level realized that I couldn't fully express everything.
This is also the major difference between Jung and Freud, right? Because Jung,
well,
or object relations.
stay tuned, everyone.
Oh yeah.
Jung's gonna be popping up in this a little bit pretty soon, but I don't know enough about it to disagree with anything you're saying. So
No, and because what I'm saying is true.
yeah, sure. Spoken like a real Freudian.
Yeah. So then, okay, right. Let me see if we've got this right, because I know we've been waffling, or I've been waffling, right? The Oedipus Complex is the idea that we want something that will make us whole and complete. Something gets in the way. We fantasize wholeness and completeness. Freud, in his early days, almost seemed to suggest that you can have a sexual relationship that will be, that will kind of give you what you want. But Freud's major insight...
Was he so bold as to say that? You're saying that like it's a controversial thing. I'm like, okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like pretty much all of them have been pretty good.
Yeah. Well, that's the key, because Freud's major insight is, yes, relationships are enjoyable, but precisely because they have a little bit of dissatisfaction in them. And that actually...
Tell me about it.
Yeah, and in fact, this is what I mean in Capitalism and Desire, Todd McGowan's book. I'm doing a book study on it. Very good book, brilliant book actually. Is he says that one of the reasons why we're so caught up in the idea of objects, that we buy a new car and a new phone, and we're always looking for the new thing, is we know it doesn't work, but we get some enjoyment out of it not working. That's what ties us into it. Mm-hmm. Is that if it just didn't work, none of us would be involved, and we would just be happy with our car that gets us from A to B and our phone that makes calls, right?
What a nightmare if it did. Yeah. Like that's if I had if I had any relationship, it's like the Instagram thing. If you see a couple on Instagram and they look like the happiest couple, they got 2 kids named Kale and Kane, and their kids' hair is put up in a faux hawk, and they shave the sides of them, and then they do cute little like gender reveal parties. I'm talking about this show called Love It or Listed Vegas, I think is what it is.
What's it called?
Love It or Listed Canada is what I've been watching. But my girlfriend and I have been getting into a lot of HGTV recently, and there's this show that has this couple based in Vegas, so of course I'm interested in it. And they're flip or flop or something, I don't know. They buy old houses and they restore them, but they
flip houses. Yeah,
they flip them in the most disgustingly Vegas, gaudy way.
Yeah.
Like they'll take a shitty...
You're in love, aren't you?
Dude,
you want to move into every single one of those houses.
Every one of them. I'm like, I get it. You'd buy it if you were a bachelor. It's like this woman and this guy who are like they're just a sweet looking couple, and they're very talented at what they do, but they represent a version of me that does not exist. That's very just like, he's a former MMA fighter, she's like very talented.
A Barbie doll.
She's a Barbie doll, and they have Barbie doll kids. That's exactly what it is.
Barbie
He's
G.I. Joe, she's
G.I.
Barbie.
Joe, Barbie doll. Yep, that's a perfect way to describe it. And so they buy all of these houses, and what were we talking about?
We were talking about the impossibility of getting what you want. No.
No.
That you're always... Oh, yeah, that if... Right, because we're always wanting something, if it just didn't work, then we would be not caught
That's
up.
what it is. You see those couples like that who seem perfectly happy and perfectly content, and like they have everything figured out. And I can't imagine what that would feel like, because you do need a goal, basically. Like, you need a goal in life to be able, you need some kind of lack to be able to work toward.
Yeah.
But
And
I
they
don't
will
know.
definitely have a massive lack. I mean, that like, funnily enough, the more successful a person is, what you often find is they're more driven to get, like, so Citizen Kane is the obvious example, right? He's so driven by Rosebud, his shitty sleigh when he was a kid, which is nothing. He's so driven to get the object that will satisfy him that he becomes infinitely rich, gets everything he could possibly want, but he's still not satisfied.
Yeah.
So there is and that's how capitalism works. Its genius is that it gives us what we want, which is not what we want, but the failure to get what the dissatisfaction. So we're satisfied in our dissatisfaction. The issue is, can we be dissatisfied in a healthier way? Which I think we can.
It's like the people who wait in line at Best Buy and to get the newest whatever, back in the day when they used to do that, or people who wait online, I guess, now to like order the first thing. The early adopters of technology. Super cool group, and I respect that. I think it's cool if you're into that. But I do think part of the pleasure is in the fact that they camp outside the Best Buy.
Oh, yeah.
Or they stay up all night. Or they work really hard. If you spend like 8 hours to try to find a really good deal on something, you end up saving money. But part of it is like you're saving the money, but you paid for it in the time that you spent to find the good deal. So
and you're giving sacrifice. That's from our last or 2 episodes ago. You have to sacrifice in order to bring the value. So you're waiting outside, you're doing all this stuff. The least capitalist friend I have is a guy called Mark Graham, who's a brilliant artist from Northern Ireland. And if you want, you should look him up and follow him on Instagram. He's a brilliant artist. And he's
What's his name?
Mark Graham, Graham, Mark Graham. And he's fascinating because, right, so I like new stuff. I'm the guy who gets a new phone, and I like a nice car or whatever, right? He picked me up when I was last in Belfast in the shittiest car you could imagine, and it was amazing. It was like so rough, like you couldn't believe it. And he said, "Pete, wait till you feel this," and he put his foot down, and it just like went to about 10 miles an hour in 10 minutes. Like, there's nothing. It's the shittiest car, dense, it's a mess. And I realized that, right, all of us are satisfied by dissatisfaction, right? But within capitalism, where it's hidden, so we don't really realize it. And it's getting the next house, the next car, the next this, the next that. But my friend Mark, he directly enjoys his dissatisfaction. So he directly enjoys that he's got this Colombo car. It's basically a car like the Lieutenant Colombo. And the reason why I say he's the least capitalist person I know is because...
You're the only person in the world who watches Columbo or has watched Columbo.
That man, I
love when you reference it, because I'm like, I get it. I know who you're talking about.
I love Columbo.
Yeah,
he's amazing.
I know you do.
Oh, yeah. And Columbo's the least capitalist guy. I mean, that's why I like Columbo. Because Columbo is completely satisfied with his dissatisfaction. He drives a shitty car.
Yeah.
He's got his relationship with his wife is beautifully rubbish, like you know,
it's a little hipstery. It's the new hipster. It's a little like,
but he's not hipster. He's before he's
pre-hipster. I mean, but it's hipster in the same way. It's like, look how much I don't like nice things.
Although the hipster is self-consciously like that, which means the hipster is the paradigm of capitalism, because what the hipster tries to do is instigate sacrifice so as to be able to enjoy.
Let's get back to that.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
We're getting off track with all these tangents, but it's fun to talk about. I mean, clearly, I'm doing my job of distracting you from the topic at hand as best I can.
Which makes people desire it.
Exactly.
Because the object of desire is what is the Oedipus Complex. Our failure to get there makes our listeners really want it.
Sure. But back to the Oedipus Complex. Okay.
Yeah.
Where are we at?
Okay, so... Right, we're nearly at the point where it gets really good.
Okay.
We've kind of hit it, which is forget about mother, father,
I don't know
child.
if I want to know when the Oedipus Complex conversation gets really good.
Yeah.
That might be good.
You got to go to some... It's a private area of Pornhub.
Yeah, exactly.
Forget about the mother, the father, the child. It's purely structural, right? Anything can be in any of these. The Oedipus Complex, I think when you get to its heart, is about saying that we as human beings are hooked into a fantasy of wholeness and completeness, that both we enjoy, but we don't enjoy that we enjoy. So we feel there's something out there that will, oh, if only we could get that new car, that would be fantastic. And the true kind of resolution of the Oedipus Complex is to realize that there is no oceanic oneness. However, there is satisfaction in revolving around things that we love. So that my friend Mark and his shitty car is that he's directly enjoying a type of lack. And that's what love is. Love is when you have somebody, you realize the relationship is brilliant and also flawed, and there's an incompleteness to it.
Yeah,
that's what generates it. You're so, look at that face. Come on, what's your problem?
No,
I know. You know what the Fundamentalist is, by the way? It's not about a podcast. It's about me trying to convince you.
Yes, it's all evangelism.
That's all it is. It is.
It's about fundamentalist religion.
And the moment that I can convince you of this, will just end. But
No,
you're
I
resisting.
think you're right.
And it's good. I'm glad you resist.
I do resist. It's a fun thing, but it's also a trope I do just to also bring you down and also try to communicate what you're saying in a way that's palatable. But also, I will say,
yes,
I do feel that like it's. I mean, what you're basically doing in that, right? So the whole purpose of philosophy, on a very basic scale, is to say why, right? You answer the question as to why.
Yeah.
But isn't it interesting that psychoanalysis, or your version of philosophy in terms of Lacanian and all that stuff, it sort of invalidates the question? Like, it basically goes, the reason why is because you were designed by your birth to ask why.
Well, the meaning of life is the fact
why
that
implies that there's a because, and a because is the satisfying thing, right?
Yeah. That's very good. That's very good. Absolutely. It's almost like the question, what is the meaning of life, is the meaning of life is that we can ask that question.
Yeah.
That we can have a meaning of life.
But I wonder, though, if that's, it just seems like there could be an alternative reason that we have to ask this question.
Yes. And this is why, right, you're pushing back, right? And we can't say why yet. That's going to come out soon, right? But, right, the whole point of the Fundamentalists is I'm trying to convert you into despair, and you're now going to convert me
into happiness.
Right? Yeah. So that's the battle. It
is the battle.
It's like Lost, the series Lost,
It is like the series Lost.
Isn't it, at the end, they have the two figures, darkness and light, and
yeah, I gotta get there. We're still trying to make our way through that show. My God, that's the longest show of all time.
Oh, so did you watch it the first time, or is this the first?
Yeah, no, I've seen it before, and I watched it in real time. And it's amazing when you watch it the first time that you really believe that this is like good drama, and then you watch it the second time, and you're like, this is the most soap opera show ever. But
things got dated very quick. It's funny that
dated, but it was the first of its time. It was the beginning of the golden age of television.
That's what we were saying at the beginning. It's like the first science, the first theory. It's like you got to start somewhere. You can't start from where you're not at. You start somewhere.
Right. I do think that you're 100% correct in that you have to start in the wrong area to get to a place that's good. But I'm interested to see how this conversation goes. I think that you and I agree on most things, so we'll just have to figure out where we disagree.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing, right? What do you think about this? And I'm saying this, like, you are drawn to the idea of a type of balance, and there is a type of like, well, maybe you're not. This is funny. Like I go like, you're drawn by the idea that there is a type of return to the law, the disequilibrium that is brought into being by becoming a creature of language.
I don't know about balance. I definitely think there's
synchronicity.
Synchronicity, yeah. My only belief so far is that there's shit going on that's outside of us.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the most radical idea I have.
Which is we're in a computer program.
No, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. It would fit the bill. It would fit my hypothesis. I mean, my whole thing right now as it stands is honestly, I have no idea. I'm just truly trying to figure out as much as I can and read as much as I can, which we'll get into.
And you're having a good time.
So much fun, dude. All this stuff. I don't understand how anyone isn't crazy into all of this. Like the fact that Freud was 100 years ago and he changed everything blows my mind.
Isn't it crazy?
Like,
these people who just change everything. They change even the fact that the way we think, like in fundamental ways.
It's happened so quickly, and to think that we're all just sort of like defeated because we're like piled on by the amount of information out there, I think is silly, because we're getting started. So I think it's very interesting.
Because one sign of goodness in potentially, as you say, the tearing of the social fabric and all that, is that there is
in the way the apocalypse.
The horsemen are coming. Is that the one of the growth areas on the internet seems to be intellectual content. That like literally people are lapping, like universities, which are mostly cesspools now. People are now finding like intellectual content online, engaging with it. That's exciting to me.
What do you think I should do? What should I do? Should I do some stuff like that?
I think you should think about doing some formal education.
I hate it. Yeah, thank you. I hate the idea of being the smarty pants, but then at the same time, it's what I've leaned on for so long that I might as well just carry it out.
I mean, by the way, when I say he's already done formal education, I'm just encouraging him, if he wants to,
Thank you so much.
potentially do something else.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. What else do you have? Any takeaways?
Oh, takeaways.
Well, have we even begun? I mean,
I feel that. I mean, it feels like we've been going on for a while.
Here's what I'll say. Here's my takeaway from this: the Oedipus Complex. You can't deny it. You can't deny the idea that you were a kid, you had comfort on every level, and just because you don't remember being a baby, you can't. I don't think any logical person would say that the effects that were or the things that happened to you as a baby aren't affecting you in some way. Same with pregnancy. You see this in everything all the time. You're an organism, and it's unfortunate, the stigma around it, because I do think it describes, most importantly, that idea that you were talking about, which is the capitalist thing. That's sort of like, there's a thing that will satisfy you, and therefore you must strive for it, and then when you get it, you're not satisfied, and yet you like the dissatisfaction because you're so used to it. Yeah. But I push back a little bit in the area that I think that, you can find satisfaction momentarily. You can find these blisses momentarily, and those can spur you on to the next great disappointment in your life.
Yes, and I think the good way of thinking about that is the difference between pleasure and enjoyment. There's pleasure in your football team winning. There's enjoyment in seeing them struggle and almost lose, and even lose and then come back. And the only thing is, pleasure is fleeting, but enjoyment lasts. And because even like and Tom McGowan in Capitalism and Desire uses this example. It's very good, where he says that if your team's always winning, one is it's not that enjoyable, or it is enjoyable because you're imagining they might lose. Like, you have to have loss woven in order for satisfaction to take place. That's what I'm basically arguing, is that, and to be honest, religions in the past have often provided a way to weave loss in. And my worry is that we live in a society that tries to disavow loss, death, nothingness.
What do you mean?
Well, we're always seeking the thing that will fix, that will satisfy us, and we're disavowing the dissatisfaction. We think that's the bad thing. That we think that kind of the struggle for the object is something we want to overcome, when actually the struggle is the thing that we need to directly embrace.
It's pretty abstract.
Yes. Well, I use the example of my work. I'm always writing to define what pyrotheology is, and I always fail. But the failure both generates a body of work, and it motivates me to keep trying. So it's a constant failure, but it's a failure that is productive and a failure that is enjoyable.
And it's also a theme that works throughout the history of everything, I'm finding out.
Yes.
Literally everyone has been completely wrong.
Yeah.
Who's dead?
No, they've all been right. They've
have, right. But they've died thinking, like, the ideas that they've had have all been found to be in their specificity super wrong, but in their broad strokes completely right, and it's spurred on all these other mistakes. It's evolution.
Yes, and by the way, like what I would argue, and we guess this is too far or whatever, but is that structurally they're always right. On the surface, at the level of the theory or the imaginary, they're wrong, but then you discover that actually at the level of the logic, any great thinker, like truly great thinker, is kind of right. Like that's the amazing thing. Like also, they kind of get it.
Yeah, and just to as an end note, Freud, dude, I mean, how cool. Like he's the best.
He's also the best because people hate him. Like we all find like we all are like that he's the weirdo, you know. And he wasn't. Yeah.
And you know what's weird, man? I was reading I was reading the book after, but I was looking through Instagram, and Barry had posted a thing that had the time cover of Freud from the 90s. That was like, it said, "Is Freud dead?" in like early 90s, and it was something he'd posted as a collage or whatever. I got off Instagram, started reading my book or whatever, and the moment I opened it, it was like, and even in 1991, Freud was on the cover of Time saying, "Is Freud dead?" And it was basically going, actually, the article uncovered that no, he is not dead, and that his ideas have lived on in such a way that you don't even have to understand the intricacies of his theory to realize that he is so permeated Western thought that it's impossible to deny his influence. Yeah. So cool.
It's like Shakespeare. Like Shakespeare invented 1,000 words. You know, we can't speak without speaking Shakespeare.
Exactly.
You know? I mean, you maybe not read a word of Shakespeare, but we have been profoundly influenced by Shakespeare.
How cool that there are just these humans that drop onto the planet that just do this kind of stuff, who are just like... And even Freud, who comes off all stern in his photos with his cigars, apparently was an incredibly like warm and loving person.
Loving guy, yeah.
And used to take his grandkids out with backpacks, go hiking, and hunt for mushrooms. Full circle, everybody. What was he doing with those mushrooms? We don't know.
Yeah, Hitler loved kids as well.
Yeah, well, yeah. He also liked art and stuff. He was a good gardener, from what I heard.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to The Fundamentalists. This has been a weird, fun episode, and let us know what you think in the comments below, or leave us a review on iTunes if you wouldn't mind. And Pete, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for being my friend. This is lovely.
You're welcome.
You've enriched my life beautifully.
You too, man.